Welcome back to Newsroom. Chella Smith here, your Middle East U.S. entertainment news. Here on YouTube, I air on Fridays. I bring you the latest on reforms and economics based on reports put out by the Middle East news media outlets. I do this weekly review and it's based off my interest. Thank you everyone for joining me. Let's get right into our news headlines. Shafaq News reported the General Secretariat of the Council of Ministries decided on Thursday to reduce the official working hours by 1 hour during the month of Ramadan in all government departments and institutions. This came according to the official letter appended to the signature of the Secretary General of the Council on March 31st. The decision was left to the government institutions and departments to determine the reduction, whether it would be at the beginning or the end of official working days. Shafaq News reports President Narchafin Barzani met with Matthew Tweller, the U.S. ambassador to Iraq, according to a statement issued by the Kurdistan Region Presidency. During a meeting, the U.S. ambassador delivered a message from U.S. President Joe Biden to President Narchafin Barzani, in which he affirmed the support for Iraq and the Kurdistan region. The statement stated that the two sides discussed the Iraqi political situation, the steps of the political process, and the sessions of Iraqi parliament, the conditions of the Kurdistan region, and the upcoming election process in the Kurdistan region, Erbil Baghdad's relations and expectations for the future of political process in the country. The statement added that the views of the two sides agreed during their meeting on the need to correct systems of governance and the adherence to Constitution and its principles is the only way to achieve security and stability, and stressed the importance of building trust and mutual understandings between Iraqi parties in order to overcome the situation and solve problems. Dialogues between the Kurdish parties on the election laws in the Kurdistan region, the importance of unity of the Kurdish parties in Baghdad and the joint work between them and the Iraqi parties, the importance of continuing the Erbil Baghdad dialogue to solve their problems, the relations of the Kurdistan region and Iraq with the countries of the region, the war on the situation of Ukraine and its effects, and the Vienna talks on the nuclear file formed other access for the meeting, which was attended by the U.S. Consul General in the Kurdistan region, according to the statement. Baghdad Obsess reports the Economic Contract Group for Iraq, which included the 7 countries, the European Union, and the World Bank, met Wednesday, March 30th. The Iraqi Economic Group, IECG, encouraged the Iraqi government to seize the opportunity to use the increased oil revenues to strengthen the social safety nets and mitigate the impact of food prices. Effective targeting is the key to ensuring that the most vulnerable groups receive adequate support. Given the current situation, the Iraqi Economic Liaison Group stressed the importance of maintaining progress on major economic reforms and suggests using the increased revenues to lay the foundations for future prosperity in Iraq by providing the required reconstruction and improving human resources and basic services. These reforms will enhance the competitiveness of the Iraqi private sector at a local and international level, especially the agriculture sector, by enhancing food securities in Iraq and increasing job opportunities. Shafaq News reports Kurdistan Regional Government spokesman Jushiar Adol on Tuesday saying that the region is about to enter the global energy map in light of the changes taking place in the region and the world at large. Adol said in a speech on the Sidelines Youth Reform in Erbil that the Kurdistan region possesses good underground energy such as oil and gas, but these wealths does not belong to the generation only, but rather belongs to the future generations, adding that the regional government worked on diversifying sources of income and this will contribute to providing job opportunities for the young. He stressed that the region is witnessing an economic and political crisis, which has reflected its impact on the performance of the regional government work in achieving its goals. Adol continued by saying that the Kurdistan region is about to enter a different and new phase from the previous one, and that is about to enter the global energy map, adding that the form of geopolitical view We are facing a major change, and through it, a great development will be achieved in the region, and with its job opportunities for the population will increase. The Prime Minister of the Kyrgyzstan Regional Government, Mauzer Barzani, said earlier in a speech during his hosting of the World Summit of the Governments in 2022 in the UAE that the region can provide the entire world with energy, not only Europe, stressing the quest to develop the gas and oil sector. Baghdad Ops List reports on Tuesday that the United States granted Iraq a 120-day exemption from Iranian energy imports. This exemption will allow the continuation of importing cross-border energies from Iran without imposing sanctions, as efforts have been intensified to revive the 2015 nuclear agreement that would lead to lifting of some sanctions of Tehran in exchange for restrictions on nuclear program. The United States granted a 120-day waiver to allow Iraq to pay for electricity imports from Iran, a foreign minister official said in a statement followed by the Iraqi news agencies, the INA, and the U.S. Secretary of State renewed the exemption from sanctions on Iraq for participating in financial transactions related to importing electricity from Iran. The waiver included Iraq's ability to meet its energy needs in the short term, while it takes steps to reduce its dependence on Iranian energy imports. Shafak News then went on to report that the Parliament Finance Committee, headed by Parliament Speaker of House Mohammed Al-Habousi, held its first meeting during the current session on Monday the 28th in the presence of the committee chairman and its members to discuss the emergency support laws and food security and the start of the second reading of the project after it was approved, which in my opinion is great. That means that they can pass laws even though they don't have a sitting prime minister or president. During the meeting, which was held at the headquarters of the Finance Committee, Al-Habousi stressed the need to proceed with the legislation of laws as addresses the problems facing the country in the current circumstances, especially with the high price and the demand caused to weaken poor segments, adding the importance of providing legal coverage for legislation and the amendment of important text. He says that the aim of the draft law is what was mentioned in the compelling reasons, directed to the host of the governor of the central bank and those concerned to discuss the necessary measures. Parliament's Finance added that the draft law will support the creation of special accounts authorizing the government to support food security and development through access funds to achieve food security, noting the need for it to mature and to take a number of observations and amendments before submitting it to Parliament for a vote. The committee decided to host the Ministers of Finance and Trade next Wednesday to discuss the financial abundance and ration card, providing that during the next week it will host a Ministers of Finance, Electricity, Planning, Agriculture, Labor, and Trade, a number of relevant officials, and the governor of the central bank to discuss the related files. Sorry about that. That was a little blurry. Economic Magazine News reports the former director of the Office of Finance Supervision, Saleh Nouri, said that the truth of the news that talks about the bankruptcy of the central bank if the exchange rate of the dollar changes. Nouri said in a statement that the bankruptcy of the Iraqi central bank is incorrect due to the presence of 3 international economic reserves for it, noting that the hard currency of the dollar and the gold reserves whose global prices are good, and the purchase of the U.S. Treasury bonds, which are of great value, high value and interest, and therefore bankruptcy is highly unlikely. He added, manipulating the exchange rate of the dollar leads to increase in imports and the exit of currencies outside the country, knowing that the dollar reserves of the central bank rose after changing the exchange rate of the dollar. A source from the Iraqi Ministry of Finance told NRT on Sunday, March 27th, that the sum of 200 billion Iraqi dinars has been transferred from Baghdad to the Kurdistan region as part of the budget deal between the federal government and Erbil. A source added that the available revenues would be enough to distribute the salaries for a month and a half to employees in the region. A source from the ministry announced on Friday that the oil revenues from February was returned to the ministry from the Finance Treasury. The government is planning to distribute salaries starting from the beginning of this month, and according to the information obtained by the NRT, the spokesman from the government assured that the commitment to distributing salaries on the 25th of each month, but the government has failed to keep this deadline a number of times. Despite the value of the barrel of oil exceeding 120 a month, that the government still faces delays in distributing salaries, and some city employees have yet to receive their salaries from the month of February. Lots of economic news this week. Baghdad Ops reports the U.S. Energy Information Administration announces on March 27th that Iraqi oil exports to America increases significantly during the past week, reaching an average of 489,000 barrels per day. The administration said in a report that the average U.S. imports of crude oil during the past week from 9 countries amounted to 5,867 million barrels per day, an increase of 334,000 compared to the previous week, which amounted to 5,533 million barrels, adding that Iraq's oil exports to Americas amounted to an average of 489,000 barrels per day during the past week, up from the previous week, in which the average exports amounted to 161,000. She noted that most of America's oil revenues during the past week came from Canada at a rate of 3.806 million barrels per day, followed by Mexico at the rate of 641,000 barrels, then Saudi Arabia at a rate of 534,000 barrels, then Brazil at a rate of 150,000 barrels, and then Ecuador at a rate of an average of 103,000 barrels per day. According to the administration, the amount of U.S. imports of crude oil from Colombia amounted to an average of 72,000 barrels, and Russia at the rate of 70,000 barrels, and Nigeria at the rate of 2,000 barrels per day, while America did not import any quantity from Trinidad or Tobago. Baghdad Magazine News reports Al Rashid Bank announces the loans to restore housing units are granted to employees without sponsors. In a statement received by Magazine News, that the bank said that it was decided to cancel the sponsors required for loans to restoring housing units that are granted to employees whose salaries are housed with the bank. He adds that the specific amount of 40 million dinars is granted to those wishing to restore their housing units at an interest rate of 5%. Shafak News then reports the leader of the Sadrist movement, Muqtada al-Sadr, on Saturday praises the parliament session that took place despite its failures to elect a president of the Republic of Iraq, strongly rejected what they called the al-Adr's plan and returning to quotas and sharing positions in the next federal government. Al-Sadr said in a tweet seen by Shafak News that thank you to everyone who attended the session out of love for Iraq. Thank you, coalitions to save the nation. Thank you for an extension. Thank you for the new generation. Thank you for the independent brothers. He adds, your appointment will be rewarded next Wednesday with those who will join again to remove corruption, dependency, and consensus, a national majority government, and we will not return to al-Adr's mixture. They will return to Parliament in session on April 6th. And that's all for this week's Newsroom Weekly Review, your Middle East U.S. entertainment news on reforms and economics. I try to bring you all the latest Dinar news without having to keep up with all the different outlets. I'm Chella Smith, Newsroom here on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my content, give me a thumbs up. I will see you next Friday for your next Newsroom update. Shout out to Currency 365 for his continued support. If you want to learn about stocks and cryptos, you can join him and his crew for the most recent updates. You can find him on YouTube or Patreon. Again, just a friendly reminder, I'll be taking some time off in April, so I'll be absent on Friday the 22nd and the 29th. We're seeing a lot of delays going on in Iraq, but will we see how Balsi push some laws through as the Speaker of Parliament, while Iraq is waiting to seat their Prime Minister and President. With the support of Saudis and the United Nations, I don't see why not. That's all for this week's newsroom. Have a fun weekend, everyone, and take care. Make sure you join us Fridays, 4 p.m. with Newsroom Updates with Chella Smith, Entertainment News. And don't forget us on Sundays for What's Cooking in the Kitchen. You can also find us behind the scenes 24/7 on Snapchat.